comic book fans. Kevin Gibbon with you once again, talking about comics. Let's talk. And today, I want to look at social justice warriors and internet trolls. Question: what do Quentin Tarantino and Blake Northcutt have in common? Answer: both were attacked by social justice warriors. Quentin Tarantino is one of the last great filmmakers in Hollywood. I have seen every Tarantino film, and more than once or twice as of this writing. As of this writing, I just saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I plan on seeing it again tomorrow. Blake Northcutt is an up-and-coming writer, and I think will go a long way. Admittedly, I haven't read any of her novels yet, but I have read a few of her comics and enjoy them very much. I had the privilege of interviewing her for one of the websites I do comic book reviews on. Now, before I enlighten you as to how each of these writers was attacked by social justice warriors, I want to let you know why I think that Quentin Tarantino is one of the last great filmmakers in Hollywood. I haven't seen a film by this auteur that didn't have love written all over every moment of it. Oh, sure, some of the old giants are still around. Spielberg, Eastwood, De Palma, they're all churning out great films here and there. But I think their prime is long since past. Then I look at the hit-or-miss styles of a J.J. Abrams or M. Night Shyamalan, as they throw whatever at the screen and hope that it sticks, without really knowing why one of their previous films resonated so well. For instance, if Shyamalan... incidentally, I do like these filmmakers' work overall. Please don't take me wrong here. But if Shyamalan knew his strengths as a filmmaker, he never would have attempted to adapt The Last Airbender. His style is subtle, not action-packed, and The Last Airbender suffers from way too much exposition and is a sluggish film to get through. Abrams takes things in the opposite direction. His action never stops, and his films barely have time to dispense any exposition. He picks up the pace and never slows down. It's almost like he hopes that with all the action we'll never see the mistakes, plot holes, or lack of character development, and a healthy dose of lens flares will cover a multitude of cinematic sins. If he had done The Last Airbender, I believe it would have been a bigger moneymaker at the box office, and at least it would have been action-packed, like its original source material. I believe that most of today's filmmakers are hit or miss because they don't have the love of cinema like Tarantino does. Oh, they love making movies, or they wouldn't be in the business, but they haven't figured out why they make hit films when they do make them. That's why they have as many successes as they do failures. The majority of Tarantino films are critical and commercial successes, with the possible exception of The Hateful Eight. And I love The Hateful Eight. It's not a big action movie like most of Tarantino's, and there isn't really a whole lot of violence except towards the end. But I think the story's great. I'm watching it on Netflix all the time right now. But why are his films successful? Because they're all his stories. No one else's. He makes his own movies. He writes the scripts. And he is the director and the producer. So when was Tarantino attacked by a social justice warrior? Well, it was just before the release of his latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. At a press conference, New York Times reporter Farah Nairi asked Tarantino about Margot Robbie's supposedly limited time in the movie, with the obvious implication that her role was reduced because she was a woman. And Tarantino rightfully said, "I reject your hypothesis." Now, the quick answer to the question is that this isn't Sharon Tate's story, it's Rick Dalton's. But if you look at Robbie's screen time in the film, she has more screen time than any other actor that's playing a real person. There's one awesome scene where Sharon Tate goes into a movie theater to watch her latest film, The Wrecking Crew, which is one of Dean Martin's Matt Helm movies. But if you took this scene out of the movie, it wouldn't change the story in any way, shape, or form. So why is the scene important? Well, because it helps us to care about Tate as a person, fleshing out her character for those who may only be vaguely familiar with who she was, or in this generation may not know any at all. If anything, Tarantino gave her more screen time than other actors who played real people in the movie. And point number 2, are you serious, social justice warrior reporter? Quentin Tarantino giving limited time to an actress because she's a woman? Have you ever seen either of the Kill Bill movies? Uma Thurman's Beatrix Kiddo is probably the strongest female lead in the history of filmmaking. The character literally takes out an entire gang of Yakuza by herself in one scene. The Kill Bill movies are only behind Pulp Fiction as my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies of all time. And my Kate Bryant character in my own Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter universe is an homage to the Kill Bill films, with the character being a composite of Uma Thurman's Beatrix Kiddo and Lucy Liu's O-Ren Ishii. Beatrix Kiddo equals BK, while Kate Bryant is KB. Kate is the strongest lead in my universe. And now we come to Blake Northwood. What social justice warrior attacked her? For those who aren't familiar with Blake, she has her own series of novels you can find online. But for the comic book enthusiast, she has written for Aspen Comics' Fathom and worked with Scott Lobdell on Dynamite's Vampirella. They are working on a new graphic novel called Everglade Angels. Obviously, someone who doesn't know Blake went on an ignorant rant. His rant insulted her and the artist of the series as Trump brothers and said their over-exaggerated depictions of the female anatomy were misogynist. Blake is a Canadian and the artist is Italian. Neither one can vote for Donald Trump even if they wanted to. Both are women. I think the social justice warrior was confused about this because Blake's name, which is interchangeable and can be used for both sexes. This particular person went on a rant and called out these comic book creators for the sake of calling them out without even bothering to find out who they were. I find these people who have way too much time on their hands and try to destroy creators' visions just for the sake of destroying them disturbing. Too many people are listening to their BS. And that brings me to the second part of my article. Hollywood, stop listening to SJWs and pandering to political groups. Now we come to Hollywood elitists who don't get it and who are doomed to see their films fail. We heard from social justice reporter Farah Nairi, who tried to intimidate Quentin Tarantino over the screen time he gave Margot Robbie, which was misguided. But we also see Hollywood filmmakers who do give in to such intimidation, or who simply want to fly in the face of convention just for the sake of woke and identity politics. It kind of started when Paul Feig and Josh Trank accused people who criticized their films, Ghostbusters 2016 and Fant Four Stick, of being misogynist and racist. That trend has continued with filmmakers like Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams, and sadly even Ron Howard, a filmmaker that I respect, calling out fans that criticize their films as internet trolls. Howard even blamed the failure of Solo, a Star Wars story, on the internet trolls. But let's break this down. First, Paul Feig's Ghostbusters. Yes, the film got negative backlash on YouTube, fairly or unfairly, before the film's release, being one of the most unliked trailers on the channel's history. But Feig only added insult to injury by lashing out at the fans who disliked the trailer by calling them misogynist, therefore leading to a box office disaster. And though the film couldn't match the original for quality, it wasn't badly made at all. Feig is a good director. The pacing was good, the characters were funny, and even though some of the humor missed, a lot of it hit right on the money. Now, the plot wasn't really anything new, but overall it should have done better at box office than it did. They also had Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, and Annie Potts. But instead of having them play their iconic characters, they were all in throwaway, unfunny cameos that had nothing to do with the story. If it were me, I would have had these actors play their iconic roles in a story that had them training the new Ghostbusters and passing the baton. I think it would have done better box office than what we had and put some salve on open wounds. Also helped the healing between original fans and potential new fans. Instead, Feig completely ignored the original, and original fans were not happy and stayed away in droves. As for Josh Trank's Fant Four Stick, that is just one horrible movie with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. The failure of the film had nothing to do with Michael B. Jordan being African American, and it had to do with the filmmakers not knowing the source material. None of the characters resembled their comic book counterparts in any way, with the possible exception of Kate Mara as Sue Storm. But none of this was the actor's fault. Josh Trank directed his cast to not read the Fantastic Four comic books. One gets the impression that he didn't read the comics either. When did Ben Grimm ever get the catchphrase, "It's clobbering time," from being abused as a kid? That's just bad, and really goes against the grain of what the Fantastic Four is all about. By contrast, the Black Panther movie had a largely African-American cast, including Michael B. Jordan, and was one of the best received comic book movies, both commercially and critically, of all time. Why? Because they got the source material right and didn't deviate heavily from it. Chadwick Boseman is perfect as T'Challa. Now we come to Star Wars. First, The Force Awakens, a well-made film with characters we care about. Han Solo was given an awesome death scene which pulled at fans' heartstrings. It was a poignant moment in that film and remains domestically the biggest moneymaker of all time. Not even Avengers Endgame could touch it. Well, internationally, yes. And Avengers Endgame won. But I'm talking domestically. Domestically, Force Awakens is still the #1 movie in North America. Then we come to Last Jedi, which was far less successful and treated the iconic character of Luke Skywalker like a whiny child. Now, I didn't mind that Luke had become disillusioned with being a Jedi after the fall of Ben Solo as he transitioned to the dark side and became Kylo Ren. Okay, but the character should have been redeemed by the end of this film, and he really wasn't. He showed up is an astral projection. That doesn't count. He should have been there in person and did combat with Kylo Ren personally, just like Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, just like Luke and Darth. And to have him show up as an astral projection and have that movie end as sloppily as it did, there's no forgiveness for that in my view. If you disagree with any of this, you can always comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think, but please be constructive, not destructive. Now, as a result of Rian Johnson's inconsiderate take on this iconic character, Last Jedi underperformed compared to The Force Awakens. And I believe Solo, a Star Wars story, tanked because of fan backlash against this. Not because of internet trolls, Ron Howard. They're against the direction Disney has taken with these iconic characters, and it's showing in their box office performances. Now, the last of the X-Men movies caused a rift between the male and female characters, with Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique dissing the male members and suggesting that the female members saved the male members so many times that you might want to think about changing the name to X-Woman. Really? Do you have to insult the male members of the team just to show female empowerment? Not only does this movie not pay attention to continuity by killing off the Mystique character and having Charles retire, with Jean Grey taking over the school, even though these films are supposed to take place in the same universe as the Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen movies, which has Charles in charge, no Scott Baio pun intended, and Mystique is still alive. But do you really need to create such a division between male and female characters? The film wasn't even identified as an X-Men movie, and this is why I believe the film failed and was one of the worst money-making superhero films in the history of superhero franchises. Down there with fan forced it. To his credit, Simon Kinberg has not jumped on the blaming fans bandwagon, but taken sole credit for the film's failure. Woke politics is now dictating our franchises, and I believe this is turning fans off. From comic book sales and now to ticket sales. Dark Phoenix, in my personal opinion, was a better movie than Apocalypse. But that film, Apocalypse, at least did respectable box office, while Dark Phoenix lost a ton of money for the studio. I believe the decisions mentioned turned off fans of the franchise. And since we're talking about Marvel-based characters, we now interface for the MCU. And Kevin Feige is promising more diversity, and now Thor is turning into a woman. If anyone criticizes this, I'm sure they'll be called sexist or misogynist or whatever the current derogatory term would be. But I digress. It isn't that we're against Jane Foster becoming a superhero, it's that we don't want anyone but Odinson to be Thor. Just like we don't want anyone but Peter Parker to be Spider-Man. We're not racist against Miles Morales, but he needs to be his own character, in my view. A different name, maybe, but Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And in my view, always will be. And those are the Spider-Man comics I will read. I'll read Miles Morales when he has his own character. But anyway, my point is, stay faithful to the source material. In an act that reeks of desperation, director Tim Miller promises that Terminator Dark Fate will scare the F out of misogynists because they have a female Terminator. If he's trying to bait the internet trolls to start being negative about his movie, it's working. YouTube channels like Nerdrotic, Geeks and Gamers, The Critical Drinker, and many more have all taken to talking negatively about this movie based on the first trailer. I believe the reason he baited them is simply that no one is talking about the film because no one cares about it. Miller is trying to get people interested in this movie by baiting these critics. And it's working, because they are talking about that movie. And if the rumors I'm hearing are true about its plot, then it is destined to fail. I seem to have read somewhere that they brought back Edward Furlong just to kill off his John Connor character. And now they have a young girl that they must protect from the future Terminator. Now, I don't know if this is true, but if it is, I'm telling you right now that this film is going to fail big time. Not because they have a female Terminator and now must protect a young girl, but because they are deviating from the source material. I can name dozens of examples where this fails. Speed Racer, Land of the Lost, RoboCop. The list goes on. When you deviate from the source material in a reboot or a remake, then you're going to fail. The future hinges on protecting John Connor in the Terminator series, and if they kill his character off, then the whole series has no purpose. A female Terminator is nothing new. The third film in the franchise had one, and that film did respectable numbers. No one got their panties in a bunch over having a female Terminator back then, and no one is going to get their panties in a bunch about it this time either. What will cause fan backlash is the disrespect for the source material, as we've been discussing in this entire article. The third Terminator was different enough and raised a few questions about Skynet and its inevitability to do decent enough without being disrespectful to the source material. Now, everything after that movie has failed to match the third film's box office, and this one isn't going to match it either. Incidentally, Sarah Connor was killed off in the third one, but now she's back. Are they going to explain this paradox or just ignore everything that came out since the second film? Now, the bottom line, Hollywood is going political and listening to social justice warriors and will suffer a backlash, not because of sexism, racism, homophobia, or any other politically correct reaction. It will be because they are deviating from the source material. There is no need to cater to social justice warriors, since many of them, as we've seen with Blake Northcutt, have no idea what they're talking about in the first place. Movies like Kill Bill, Wonder Woman, and many others have strong female leads. People can dislike Fan Stick and not be racist. People can enjoy Black Panther because it stays true to the source material. Michael B. Jordan is in both of those movies. He didn't fit in the first one and was great in the second one. There are gay characters in movies, and there are movies with no gay characters. Not all white males have to be villains post-Endgame, nor do they have to pander to politically correct propaganda. Let's have everyone be equal and not change any iconic characters for the sake of political correctness. Okay, that's my rant for today. If you agree with me, mention it in the comments section below. If you disagree with me, mention it also in the comments section below. I ask that you be constructive in your criticism and not destructive. If you love comics as much as I do, you're going to subscribe to my channel. I review comics for Comic Crusaders. I also have my own franchises, Adolescent Radioactive Samurai Platypi and Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter. They're available on Comics Central, Indie Planet, and Comixology. Check them out. Stay tuned to this broadcast for more information. Also, like the Facebook pages for each franchise for more information. Check out my Patreon site for some neat original artwork and shows that you won't find on YouTube. Until next time, this is Kevin Gibbons saying so long and keep reading those comics.